third day that investigators from the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe have sought access to the MH17 site. It's true that they have been given somewhat better access today than on the previous 2 days, but as anyone who has been watching the footage would know, this is still an absolutely shambolic situation. It is an absolutely shambolic situation. It does look more like a garden clean-up than a forensic investigation. And given that 298 people have died, given that 37 Australians are amongst the dead, it is imperative that we get a properly secure site and a proper investigation. It's absolutely imperative that we bring them home, but in order to bring them home, we've got to first get them out. So that is what all of our energies and efforts are directed to, bringing them out so we can get them home. We want to retrieve the bodies, we want to investigate the site, and we want to punish the guilty. That's what we want to do. So I can report that there are now some 45 Australian officials either abroad or on their way abroad to support the Australian dead. Mostly they have been deployed to Kiev. There are consular officials, disaster victim identification officials, Australian Federal Police members, air transport investigators, and we have a C-17 military transport on standby if required for deployment to the Ukraine. Since Friday, we have had meetings of the National Security Committee every day. I had a cabinet hookup yesterday to ensure that all of my colleagues are well informed as to what the government is doing. This morning I visited the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade Crisis Centre to thank the team there for the work they've been doing over the last 4 days. Their job has been to speak with the families and next of kin of the victims. It's difficult and harrowing work at a difficult and daunting time, and I want to thank them for their professionalism and their compassion. They are doing a splendid job under difficult circumstances. After visiting the crisis centre, I made my first 2 calls to victims and their families, to victims' families. My intention is to call all of the families of victims that would like a call from their Prime Minister. I imagine that some will want calls, some may not. I don't want to intrude on anyone's grief, but on the other hand, I want everyone to know that their Prime Minister is available to them at a time like this. Overnight, I have spoken with Prime Minister Rutte of the Netherlands. I've spoken with President Poroshenko of Ukraine. I've spoken with David Cameron of the United Kingdom, with President Obama of the United States, with Prime Minister Najib of Malaysia, with Chancellor Merkel of Germany, with President Hollande of France. I've now spoken to Prime Ministers Rutte and Cameron and President Poroshenko 3 times since last Friday. I've spoken to President Obama and Prime Minister Najib twice since last Friday, and I've made my initial calls to Chancellor Merkel, President Hollande, and of course I've also spoken to Prime Minister Key of New Zealand. And also, overnight, I spoke to President Putin of Russia. I should say 2 things. First, that the mood of the leaders that I spoke to is firmer and sterner now than it was in the 24 hours immediately subsequent to the downing of this aircraft. It's a firmer and sterner mood than it was, and frankly, it's firmer and sterner as it should be as more and more facts emerge about this terrible, terrible event. As for the conversation with President Putin, I'm not going to go into details. I don't think it is fair to my international interlocutors to go into great detail as to the nature of the conversation. But to President Putin's credit, he did say all the right things. I want to stress what he said was fine. The challenge now is to hold the President to his word. That's certainly my intention, and it should be the intention of the family of nations to hold the President to his word. I can announce today that Air Chief Marshal Angus Houston is already in Kiev. He arrived there last night to be my envoy in the Ukraine, to be my envoy on the ground, to ensure that the Australian effort is handled with authority, with reassurance and with coordination. As a former Chief of the Defence Force, as a former very senior military officer, as someone who has had recent experience with MH17, he is perfectly placed to provide the authority, the reassurance and the coordination that we need in an incident of this significance. Again, our determination is to ensure that there is justice for the dead and closure as far as is humanly possible for the living. I do want to say that over the next 24 hours there is going to be an Australian-sponsored resolution put to the United Nations Security Council. It's a strong resolution calling for full and unfettered access to the site, ensuring that the bodies are properly retrieved, properly dealt with the respect and dignity that they deserve. As you know, Julie Bishop left Australia, Foreign Minister Bishop left Australia on Saturday night. She arrived in Washington Sunday morning, Washington time. She received a series of security briefings in Washington yesterday, Washington time, and she'll be spending Monday local time in New York prosecuting our case at the United Nations Security Council. I don't know how our resolution will go. I know that it should be carried by acclamation. Decency and justice requires that this resolution be carried by acclamation, but as we all know, these are difficult and daunting times, and it is wrong to be too certain about what the future might hold. What I do want to assure you all of is the utter determination of the Australian government to do the right thing by the victims of this terrible crime. We will not rest. We will not rest until we have done all we humanly can, to retrieve the bodies, to secure the site and to ensure justice for the people who died.